A 3.5 hour long 18-18 tie for the Philadelphia Eagles in the Week 2 preseason battle against the Cleveland Browns. Takeaways coming up next right here on Locked On Eagles.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Eagles, your first listen each and every day. Welcome, Eagles fans, to a late night Thursday edition of the show. And it's a late night edition because, as I mentioned, this preseason game, Gino, went for 3.5 hours. There were injuries, players getting carted off, some crazy quarterback play, both good and bad for the Birds, a lot of standouts on both sides of the ball, some guys struggling. We got a lot of takeaways on this one.
This was, for somebody like myself, a classic Pac-12 after dark.
This one was
Tanner
for the
McKee,
diehards, I will say.
You got DTR. He threw some Kellen Mond in there at the end. It was
that's a great.
It was something. It was a football game, right? And that's why it's the greatest sport in America.
You got to really love it to get through
fans,
this one.
Man.
Yeah, man, you're.
If you were there, please let us know if you're an everyday.
And if you stayed for the whole game. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. We might have to send some your way. That's sicko behavior for sure. But at the end of the day, Lou, it wasn't as clean of a game as the game against Baltimore, but in total, I think you got a lot of individual performances tonight that really stood out, and in a big way too. And once again, we know we can talk about the Tanner McKee mania, how good he looked. But when you have these Ferraris and Porsches and Rolls Royces, the Jalen Carters, the Nolan Smiths that are showing up, and here's Nakobe Dean, who didn't start a game last year, comes out, makes a huge play tonight, and just shows exactly what he's going to be for this Philadelphia Eagles team.
Huge. And we were talking about it before the show. I mean, all these Georgia standouts are getting the hype, and then you see it come to fruition on the field, right? With Jalen Carter last week, his first NFL snap is a beautiful pass rush win, getting to the quarterback and getting a QB hit on Josh Johnson. You know, of course, Nolan Smith making some nice plays today, got some wins last week against Baltimore as well. Jordan Davis has looked good this summer. Those guys getting the attention. Meanwhile, Nakobe Dean, we all know the expectations are there, replacing TJ Edwards and Kazir White, but he's been dealing with an ankle injury, and you haven't really heard much about him at camp. How awesome was it to see him on that drive force a fumble on a goal line stand to get the Eagles the ball back? Gino, that's all I needed to see. The minute I saw that play, I said, get him out of there. I mean, this is a playmaker that I don't think the Eagles have had at linebacker in a long time.
No, it isn't, Lou. And the big concern was when he got injured, who's going to come in and replace him if so. Yeah. And I think you got some answers in that department. But the biggest thing you could take away from the linebacking group is that you have a true superstar in the making in this kid. He is,
I think so,
without a doubt, the best talent, in my opinion, that you've had in this room in how long? I
don't know. I mean, at least from a playmaking perspective, this is going to be maybe Jordan Hicks 2015, 2016 level. Like when it comes to actually being able
higher ceiling than that,
right? Though. But just remember, like Hicks, his first year was forcing turnovers like crazy. Right. I think the kid had 5 interceptions at the time, and that's the thing is like, is Dean's floor maybe lower just based on the unknown compared to what Edwards and White were last year? Sure, but again, there's a level, a ceiling here with again the playmaking specifically. That play he made today that you have not really seen with Edwards and White.
And the thing about Nakobe is you got him for pennies on the dollar, Lou, and you didn't overthink that pick. And a lot of those guys that you didn't overthink, you got right. Drafting Georgia Bulldogs works. Drafting guys from the SEC works. The 2 wide receivers you had on the sideline, your quarterback, SEC guys, they all played in big-time games, playing against big-time talent. Look at Nolan Smith tonight, going against the guy who's 150 pounds.
I was going to say, can we talk about
him?
What he just did to DaWGS Jones, who's 6'8", 340 pounds? Meanwhile, Nolan Smith literally is 100 pounds lighter. And
I believe so, yeah.
Smith is bull rushing him. Like, again, there were some wins where he showed off some incredible bend, speed, but the power moves on DaWGS Jones was incredible.
When you look at him, it's like watching Ant-Man go up against some of these guys, right? It's like he's so little, but he's able to just push these guys back off the line of scrimmage.
Dude, and a Gumby-like bend. I mean, holy cow, some of those plays.
Licorice legs, man. He's got licorice legs. Like, they just don't make any sense. And he has what Josh Sweat has, which made Josh Sweat so unbelievable coming out that you could get this guy, right? The guy that can bend like that. And then now you have Hassan Riddick, and this is your third edge rusher that can do that, Lou. That's like a Cy Young pitcher going out and developing a new pitch that is all of a sudden unhittable. That's what Nolan Smith is. I mean, he's going to come in and do exactly what he did tonight, Lou. Dawan Jones, big-time talent. He's taken on guys like that. In college, he didn't get to play DeJuan Jones last year, but he showed what he would have done to him if he did get to play him, right? But, man, how do you look at this team and say the youth isn't the way to go moving forward? Because after 2017, you got old, you got slow, you were the elephant team that just
they didn't have these
down
guys
the field.
to take the pressure off the veterans.
No, you didn't.
Sure.
You didn't have the depth. You didn't have the athleticism. Howie Roseman was so bang on with can they run, do they love football, and can they stay healthy? Because right now, outside of some depth pieces, relatively, you've been healthy for the most part, which this was a tough game to watch in that regard.
Yeah, for sure. And we'll get into that. Couple guys taken off on, stretchers, carted off the field, 6 total injuries. So we'll definitely get updates on those. But again, just to kind of recap the standouts, like early on in this game with Smith and Dean. The other play too, Nolan Smith is one of the guys that got injured. It was off that chase down play where he follows the running back across the entire field and locks him down. I mean, that kind of pursuit for an edge rusher should not be allowed. I mean, it's unbelievable.
Well, the one thing that they took away from the years of the Brandon Graham picks, which was 14 years ago, Lou. He's
crazy,
in his 14th season.
Tied with Chuck Bednarik for the most in Eagles
One
history.
thing that they have instilled from day one, and this is going back to the Jim Johnson era, edge rushers are going to pursue and are going to battle from snap to whistle every single play. That's why BG has been here for 14 years. He made his career off of doing just that. And if Nolan Smith, who's an elite level athlete, does that, Lou, I mean, you're talking about being able to play this kid all over the football field. That's like Micah Parsons level potential that you're potentially talking about, right?
I love hearing that. No, for sure. Absolutely. And that's what got me pretty fired up in that first half. Gino, there were some negatives as well to get into, but also some positives in the second half from guys battling for roster spots on both sides of the ball. An 18-18 tie between the Eagles and the Browns. Continued takeaways coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast. And guys, today's show is sponsored by Nutrafol. You don't have to choose between better hair growth and your health. Nutrafol provides a whole body health approach for men that promote healthier hair. No drugs, no compromises, just better hair. Men think losing their hair is inevitable. Take control of your hair's future with Nutrafol's science-backed hair growth supplement for men. Did you know that 80% of men will experience hair thinning in their lifetime? It's normal, but it doesn't have to be your fate. You can get ahead of it thinning with Nutrafol. Men tired of weakening of thinning hair? Do you want to reach your full hair potential? Leading hair growth supplement Nutrafol helps improve your hair growth, visible thickness, and visible scalp coverage. Nutrafol is the #1 dermatologist recommended hair growth supplement, clinically shown to improve your hair growth, visible thickness, and visible scalp coverage. Their hair growth supplements use physical formulated, natural, science-backed ingredients. Their drug-free patented technology provides consistent, reliable results without compromising your sexual health. Go to Nutrafol.com/men to take their hair health wellness quiz. Identify causes of your thinning hair, and Nutrafol will give you a personalized plan for better hair health through whole body wellness. Nutrafol supports healthy hair growth from within by targeting root causes of thinning, such as stress, hormones, environment, nutrition, lifestyle, and metabolism through whole body health. Take the first step to visibly thicker, healthier hair. For a limited time, Nutrafol is offering our listeners $10 off your first month subscription and free shipping when you go to Nutrafol.com/men and enter the promo code LOCKEDON. Again, that's Nutrafol.com/men and enter the promo code LOCKEDON for $10 off your first month. Find out why over 4,000 healthcare professionals recommend Nutrafol for healthier hair. All right, Eagles fans, we are wrapping up. Continuing this recap, I should say, wrapping up a 3.5-hour bender, it felt like, of a preseason game. And a sicko game is the perfect way to describe it. An 18-18 tie between the Eagles and the Browns. Gino, we started the show by highlighting the standouts in the first half, and it was the Georgia Bulldogs. It wasn't Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis who finally started to get some rest. They only played the first drive. But Nakobe Dean forces a fumble on a goal line stand. The Eagles get the ball back Nolan Smith had 3 amazing pass rush wins against Dawan Jones, a couple nice pursuits against the run. So they stood out. The other guy that stood out, though, and he's a young player, you mentioned all the young guys shining, it's McKee Mania. Tanner McKee continues to shine. I mean, the ball placement of this kid today with these back shoulder throws, those touchdowns, and another one that should have been in the end zone. You would think this guy's been playing for 10 years. I mean, it's unbelievable. And looking at him compared to what Marcus Mariota did again today, which was just egregious throwing of the football. McKee, I think, is he going to be QB2? I don't think so. I don't think it's time to panic just yet in that way with Mariota. But I think McKee, between Mariota's struggles and how good Tanner looks this preseason, he's a lock to make the 53. And a week and a half ago, I would say he wasn't even on the team.
Clayton Thorson was pick 167.
And he's had what had me scarred why I didn't like the McKee pick to begin with. It was on Clayton.
Pick 167. You want to know what Tanner McKee was? 188. And that's the thing about quarterbacks that just makes evaluating this position so difficult. Because the Eagles
McKee's
have
a statue
tried
too, so it was hard to evaluate those kind of guys in this modern day too.
They've tried it time and time and time again. I thought Carson Strong paid him $300,000 guaranteed last year, the highest paid guaranteed contract in the league for UDFA.
Gino, McKee is who we thought Strong was going to be last
100%.
year. A statue with a rocket. Exactly. Yeah.
You are spot on, man. And I mean, in back-to-back games, the first throw comes out and throws with confidence and hits guys in rhythm. And I've said on this show, for those listening back the last couple weeks, what can't Tanner McKee and Ian Book, thank goodness he didn't play tonight because Marcus Mariota was so bad as well. What can't those two guys afford to do? Well, Mariota did, unfortunately, what I thought Tanner McKee would be the victim of, and made it difficult to evaluate the wide receivers. And at the point Tanner McKee was in the game, you lose Tyree Cleveland. The guys that were on the field were not catching the football at that point. I mean, I think every single wide receiver had a drop. Deion Kane, Tanner McKee makes one of the more athletic plays he's going to make in the red zone, escapes on a nice little leak out play to Dan Arnold, finds a second option to Kane, makes a nice throw, and it's a drop. But you just see that there's something different about this kid when it comes to passing the football.
His arm talent's unbelievable.
It's out of control. And unless you have one of these young guys like DTR, who's just a freak athletically and can just throw in rhythm, which is just a dime a dozen, right? Like you get the Brock Purdy guy last year, like that happens, right? You probably find one of those guys a year. But the majority of what you want to find are the Tanner McKees of the world, Lou.
That's a good point. Yeah,
he did an excellent job tonight. And I think if you look at the other quarterbacks he's gone against, who has played the best outside of him in his 2 outings, maybe DTR tonight, who had a heck of a game.
DTR was close today. He had a great game. But yeah, outside of that, Gino, it's been McKee. Finishes 11 for 18, 149 yards and a touchdown. And the numbers
11 for 18 with what, 6 drops?
There were
so
6 drops.
17 for 18.
He should have been, there was only maybe 1 real incompletion. Yeah, Gino. And some of those throws that were dropped, by the way, were his best passes.
And he put them on a dime. And I've mentioned on the show how A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith are now developing these back shoulder timing routes with Jalen Hurts. Tanner McKee already has that club in his bag, man. And
he does.
You always hear every preseason how the backup guys have a good rapport with the third, second wide receiver groups. You see that. And that's what you want to see out of a quarterback. I think it measures their football intelligence, their understanding of hitting landmarks. He can put that ball wherever he wants to on whatever route, exactly where it needs to be. I think it comes down to the connection that he has with these guys, which comes from being a hard worker, having a good arm, and just understanding that you're a rookie and they don't want to see you scramble and try to make the bet. They want to see you take chances. And that's what he did tonight and last week. And that's why he's going to be on the 53-man roster without a doubt.
Well, not to mention, too, because Mariota, I mean, the errant passes, how bad he was missing high today. That interception was brutal, but that was the 3rd bad miss. He had 2 really bad ones before that. Again, with Marcus, and this is the thing I said about him last week, because he didn't have a good game last week either throwing the football. He hasn't had a good summer passing the football. This has been a trend for a few months. I bet, exactly. So, I mean, you've been watching him since the Oregon days. For me, I said last week, again, this is what we knew Mariota was, though, right? Even Atlanta last year, we knew they were signing him more for his elite mobility as a quarterback, how that fits perfectly into this offense. You give him enough weapons like A.J. Brown, Dallas Goedert, Smith, there's a certain floor of passing that he can get by with, kind of like Gardner Minshew last year. But I will say, and again, the $5 million guaranteed, they're not suddenly going to go out there and sign Nick Foles. I know all the radio guys now are going to start pushing that this week, and there's jokes about Carson Wentz being out there and all of that. But to me, I think it's less about like replacing Mariota instantly, but how it's gone on long enough, these struggles for Marcus, that it pushes them even more to want to keep another quarterback. And thank God McKee looks the way he does, or they would have been out there looking for somebody else if all they had was Ian Book. They'd be bringing in another veteran 100%. Not saying again they would cut Mariota, $5 million guaranteed, but they would be looking.
Yeah, I mean, a Taylor Heineke might be coming through that door at that point, right?
Right.
There might be a real talk about that if that is the case. But at $5 million guaranteed, he's not going anywhere. He's going to be on the roster. But Tanner McKee makes you feel really good about your future at that backup quarterback position if this kid really does have a head on his shoulders.
Yeah.
And somebody made a great point that, like, if you look back to mock drafts last year, there were some that had this kid, like, late first round, early second, then
because of the
Stanford is just so bad. They had nobody to throw the football to, and now you could see that he can sling the rock, and I
don't even think Nate Sudfeld looked this good at any point in the preseason.
No. Nate looked good in like rhythm timing type stuff, but like Tanner McKee,
but he wasn't making these kind of passes.
Can make passes. Like,
these were wild throws.
He can make passes that you're saying third or fourth level. I mean, Marcus Mariota's his 8th or 9th year in the league, and he can't make those back shoulder timing throws. He cannot do it. And there's just something different about this kid. But that's a great point, Lou, that if they didn't have this kid, like, what if you didn't look into him? What would we be talking about right now?
They'd be signing somebody. Yeah.
I'm not
against
really
saying
would
they
have to be.
And again, I still believe that Nick Foles had a terrible preseason in 2018, and then he comes in and leads them
against Cleveland. That game was ugly, no kidding.
Exactly.
Right?
So I'm not saying Mariota in the regular season with a real game plan and with all these weapons around him suddenly will continue to be who he is. I'm also not saying he's going to be a star, but I think there is a middle ground there that can still make him a good QB2, start to run him more, get the real RPO game going. I still believe Mariota can be a good backup this year, but it's concerning because this hasn't just been one game. The passing is absolutely a problem. So it's really good to see that McKee Mania definitely does continue. Gino, you mentioned injuries earlier. Want to get into that too before we take another quick break. 2 guys taken out on stretchers today sucks. I mean, Tyree Cleveland has been really building up some momentum in that wide receiver battle, and then my guy Moro Ajomo just crushing again today, one-on-one pass rush reps. At defensive tackle, I said he was a lock to make this 53-man roster. Felt even stronger about that after today's performance. He gets carted off with a neck injury. Again, we don't know the severity of these injuries, but that always sucks when you see those guys, especially the ones like fighting for their jobs for a life in the NFL, deal with that kind of injury in a preseason game. That just sucks.
Was I ever more right saying last week or a couple days ago that I'd be fine watching 3 televised joint practices?
Yeah, no, honestly.
There's no reason for it. Like, at the point when Moro Ajomo was on that stretcher, they should have called the football game.
Well, and even before that, it's like Zach McPherson gets targeted all game, and then he goes down with an injury, and now they think it might be an Achilles. For
Sean
Zach.
Bradley last week, too.
He tears his Achilles.
Special teamers, and 2 Achilles injuries in a week is just unbelievable. And see 2 neck injuries in the same game. I hate this stuff, man. It's August 17th. We're less than a month away from seeing real game action, and it's unfortunate that we need this to see if these guys can play and keep their job, but there's got to be some difference. But shortening the games, I mean, limiting some sort of stuff where they do that in some different environments, like all-star football games like the Senior Bowl, where like you can't blitz or like can't do certain things to just keep it safer for these guys to get them to the regular season. And there might have to be an investigation into something like that, because 6 tonight, Lou,
or just make the game shorter
in a tie.
Yeah, and maybe don't give them 3.
This question: who cares about these games? Who did the Eagles play in both seasons when they went to the Super Bowl in the last 6 years?
Yeah, that's right.
You don't know. You don't care. Nobody cares.
I don't know. I couldn't tell you. And it's not just because this game lasted for 3.5 hours and I'm tired. I just genuinely have no idea. So exactly. I think the games need to be shorter too. Don't give them 3.5 hours to potentially get hurt.
Dude, that's insane. I mean,
that's tough.
Just like muscular injuries as well. You got a bunch of guys on hammies. I mean, the Nick Siriannis of the world are the leading proponents of this stuff. There has to be deeper conversations, right? And yeah, with some depth players, but other teams, it's big injuries, and nobody wants to see that happen, man. And especially tonight when those guys were balling, and I thought Zach battled back, and I thought Morrow battled back, and
Zach,
Sean's a big-time special teams player. It just sucks.
How many times did DTR target Zach in the first half? And it felt like he had some brutal plays in coverage, a really bad missed tackle on third down, but battled back with some nice pass breakups, and now he goes down, and suddenly you're thinking, okay, that was going to be probably your primary slot backup. Suddenly Josiah Scott is back in here as I think a lock to make this roster, Gino, and he had a good game today in the second half. So if McPherson, and again, we can't confirm that it is an Achilles injury, but if it is and he's out for the year, Scott's on this team because he's your only other slot guy who's also cross-trained to play safety as well. So if you go later on safety this year, I thought Justin Evans was not good again today. And if you go heavier at corner, you're going to need somebody versatile like Scott. So I think these injuries does change things up when it comes to the 53 as well. Like if Ajomo's out for a while, I thought Contavious Street might get cut at this point. Now, I don't know.
Agreed. I'm there with you. And I think linebacker, you kind of figured it out as well. That Sean Bradley injury kind of made it a little easier for you.
And with Miles Jack not playing until, halfway through the third quarter, Gino, it was the Cunningham and Christian Ellis show, and they both, I thought, made a lot of plays.
Right, and Josiah Scott being the only guy, it's like that's unfortunate that you have to hand him that position kind of, but I'd like to see Josh Jobe maybe next week take some snaps at that slot corner position, right? Because who else is going to play it? If Avante goes down, which history shows it could happen, and why we were so high on Zach McPherson, and tonight to see him go out there and play outside corner and look okay at times, which was to see if he could be an outside corner, I think, and more.
Which is where they originally had him.
Yeah, they did, and I think he is more of an inside guy, but now with the injury, I mean, are you going to keep a seventh cornerback, or are you going to keep Eli Ricks, who looks good and can make a case for Mario Goodrich? And I think a lot of those guys make a good case, and it's unfortunate that injuries are going to have to play a little bit to do with that, Lou, but at the same time, there are guys that are going to be cut that you're going to be kind of upset about. And that's what this time of year is all about, is to find out if you have to make those difficult cuts to figure out how good you actually are.
I just had a thought too. I mean, our two guys on the edge, maybe suddenly there's a spot for them. I thought both, Teron Jackson and Janarius Robinson had great games today in the edge. And I thought both were going to get cut, unjustifiably so, because of Derek Barnett. But maybe if they go lighter at linebacker and safety, maybe instead of keeping like a Ricks, you want to keep one of those other edge rushers. They were getting to the quarterback consistently. Both of them played the majority of this game, and they were getting there almost every other play.
No, without a doubt. And when cutdown day comes, it's going to stink, because the Teron Jacksons of the world, the Janarius Robinsons, you should probably be able to get something for guys like that.
Shows how deep you are, though, And so I guess it's kind of a positive.
It's the good and bad about the National Football League. One thing I think they should do, make the roster 60-man at this point. I think we're well beyond that. And with the practice squad, I would say 75 is like a good number. Like, cut 15 guys. I think there are enough spots and enough guys that go down in a season that even 70 guys on a roster, 75 guys is a pretty good number. And especially for the Eagles, like, you're going to lose them because why? Because of a number that's just some archaic number that we've just gone along with for X amount of years, right? And that's what the best part about being this Eagles team is that Howie Roseman did such a great job compiling all this talent that we have to make these decisions, right? And with the AJs being on the sideline in sweatpants and Devontae's, those other guys have to go win their jobs. And some guys won them tonight. Some guys lost them.
Yeah, I think more on defense. Guys are winning the jobs. On offense continuously today again.
Throwing them away. Wide receiver just throwing away.
Wide receiver, I think Joseph Nagata had a better game, but not enough to warrant being kept on this roster. At tight end, I think tight ends blocked really well in the run game. Grant Calcaterra, he actually made some nice blocks, and I'm like, that's something he needs to be able to do if Jack Stahl were to get cut, for instance, who's been your main blocking tight end. But overall, the tight ends didn't flash. I mean, Trey Sermon, great to see him bounce back after that fumble with a touchdown run, but I don't think he's convincing this team to keep a fifth running back. I think it's on defense. It's, do we keep another edge rusher? Do we keep Eli Ricks and we bring in Josiah Scott? At safety, what do we do here with Justin Evans, who's being used as a returner tonight? Kevon Wallace looks really good again, tackling in the open field. By the way, and this isn't somebody that's fighting for a roster spot, but Gino, how about Sidney Brown? Just, again, continues to be all over the field. I mean, I think I'm convinced he needs to be one of the safeties that are on the field every single play, regardless of if you have 2 out there, 1, 2, or 3, even over Blankenship. Nobody at this position can do what Brown does.
He's already pulling on my heartstrings, man. He wasn't one of my favorites in the class, but seeing him on the field... I'm not saying he's going to be CPJ right away, but I think we're going to forget about him quick. I'm a big fan of Brown. Unbelievable.
His range is
ability
crazy.
To come downfield is unbelievable. His ability to accelerate.
Another hit stick play today, man.
When he is lined up on the far hash at the 25 and almost runs down Austin Watkins on that bobbled catch and strips him a yard into the end zone. He almost made that play. That's crazy athleticism. And that's a 3rd-round pick, Lou. The Eagles nailed this 2023 class, and the dividends are going to be reaped right away out of this class. And Keely Ringo, we haven't even talked about him. I don't think flashed some good spots in man coverage. Got to figure out the tackling thing.
You can tell he's raw with tackling, with locating the ball.
Yeah.
There was a play today along the right sideline that was caught, and it set up a red zone drill that Ringo was right there, but he just could not locate the football in the air. But, his mirroring of wide receivers, it's there, which is super impressive. Yeah.
It's evident, especially a guy who was talked about to be a safety. He's not going to be a safety if you can't tackle. I'll tell you that much. But if his hips are this good,
trying to tackle right now, no.
If his hips and this ability to mirror are as good as they've shown over the last couple games, I think you have something to develop out of this.
I was actually impressed by that and surprised because I felt like with Ringo, he seemed a little stiffer sometimes on tape at Georgia, where the changing of direction with those hips sometimes was a little bit tougher. But that hasn't really been an issue when he's been press man coverage.
No, I totally agree, Lou. And a lot of guys have surprised me so far. And we could literally go down the 90-man and probably pick out one thing nice to say about every single one of them. And I'm so happy that we had to watch a 3.5-hour tie and get to talk about it. And you guys are going to listen to this show.
I don't know how many listeners are going to agree with you.
If you're this far into the
if you listen to this show,
you're this far into the episode.
And you're 27 minutes into a preseason tie. Yeah.
Literally love you. Swear, you are the best.
No, absolutely. 18-18. Eagles, Browns tie, week 2 preseason, 3.5 hours, barn burner, sicko game, as Gino said it. Joint practices coming up next week with the Indianapolis Colts as we move forward into another week of preseason action. We have one more show, though, for you this week, Stock Up, Stock Down preseason edition coming up tomorrow for you right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, or Locked On Eagles podcast is always part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Shout out to our everydayers for making us your first listen Monday through Friday. Until tomorrow's edition of the show, though, we're going to sign off. For Gino Camilleri, I'm Lou DiBiase. As always, thank you for downloading, thank you for watching and listening, and let's go Birds.
Fly, Eagles, fly.